Today on the 1012 Big Show, I'm joined by Leah Nelson and Joe Goodman to recap the weekend that was, including was it a good or a bad weekend for the Big 12. Then Alec Busse from 247. We're going to dive in on Iowa State, the impact of their win over Iowa, and look ahead to the season that is left before them. Plus, Chase Kiddy joins us to talk about stock up and stock down in the Big 12, and we preview the phenomenal Week 3 slate coming up on the 1012.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Life gets easier with great assists, and State Farm is here to dish one your way. Get in touch over the phone or on the app to get the teammate you need. State Farm with the assist. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability and eligibility vary by state.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Welcome to the 1012 Big Show. That's right. It is where we recap the weekend that was every Monday here on the 1012 podcast. Of course, we are the flagship show of the 1012 network and partners with Sports Social, Europe's biggest sports podcast network. I'm Philip Slavin. Wherever you are joining us from, wherever you are listening, however you are listening, do us a favor. Leave us a review. 5 stars would be great as well. We would greatly appreciate it. And tell a friend. If you got a friend who's a Big 12 fan, who would like to hear some more Big 12 content, looking for some Big 12 podcasts, send them to 1012network.com or just tell them about the 1012 podcast. We kick the show off on Mondays, same way each week, by going in the rotation. And in tonight's rotation, joining us on loan from Cyclone Fanatic, and of course the trash talk queen of the 1012 network, Miss Quad Cities herself, Leah Nelson.
It feels good to be back on the show. Thanks for having me, Philip. And I'm pumped to get to talk some Big 12 football with Joe.
Yeah, it's not normal that we have you on for non-softball, so this is a real treat for those who don't listen during the softball shows. Leah is a longtime co-host, guest contributor here on the show, so we're excited to have her for football. That Joe, she mentioned the pinky to Matt Workman's brain on the Bear Den podcast, our Baylor show on the 1012 network. He is Joe Goodman.
I specifically wore my Baylor softball shirt tonight as well. So
I love that. That's perfect. I knew I would like you.
Joe knows what he's doing. Okay, this is not his first time on a podcast, and so he always comes prepared. Okay, so let's start with a recap of Week 2, and I got my notes, so I'm going to run through before I let you two dive in. It's not how you start games; it's how you finish them. I think that was well proven this weekend in the Big 12. Kansas got out to a 21-6 start in the first quarter before getting outscored 36-10 due to Missouri's defense bowing up and some mistakes on the Kansas offense, though I wouldn't necessarily blame Jalen Daniels. Kansas State led Army 13-0. Army didn't score their first points until the final seconds ticked off of the clock in the second quarter, but Kansas State still lost 24-21. West Virginia struck first on the road at Ohio, but ultimately lost 17-10. Meanwhile, on the flip side of that, Baylor got down 2 scores 3 times to SMU, including in the fourth quarter, but fought all the way back to win in double overtime. Houston trailed 3-0 until a 54-yard touchdown run with 34 seconds left in the first half finally broke the offense open for the Cougars, who then went on to score a ton of points in the second half and run away with it. And of course, Arizona State almost pulled off the comeback win before giving up a 58-yard touchdown pass with less than a minute left. There were a lot of highs this Saturday, some we'll talk about in a minute. There were a lot of lows this Saturday for the Big 12 as well. So let's start with this. Leah, I'll let you go first. Do you feel like Week 2 is a success or a disappointment for the Big 12 conference as a whole?
Besides Iowa State, I think it is a little bit of a disappointment. It had everything. Like, it was going to be a great weekend. And I even saw some people tweeting like, oh, shout out Big 12 football. And then just like all the games you mentioned, it was disappointing. I mean, Kansas leading Mizzou for most of the game. We had last year's Big 12 championship team losing to the worst SEC team, and the list goes on. So again, besides Iowa State, it was disappointing for sure.
Joe, same question.
I think on the whole, it's somewhere in between based off of the perception the rest of the country is going to have. It's a disappointment. In all reality, you lost 2 of the games you lost were true road games in the SEC. Those are never easy to win, no matter who you're playing. You've got a lot of schools that took care of business, like that we didn't even mention, right? Texas Tech won 62-14. Utah won 63-9. Cincinnati won. So there was a lot of schools who just did what they were supposed to do, but there was a few disappointments in there. I don't think Baylor's road win, I don't think is going to be able to carry the water that the Kansas State, the West Virginia losses are going to leave around for people. So I think media perception, this is terrible for the conference this past week. But in all reality, I don't think it was as bad as the perceptions go.
I mean, we've got 2 straight weeks of it's not as bad as it seems. And when that has to be the message for 2 straight weeks, at a certain point, actually it is. It's not as bad as it seems. If we really dive in deep here
just wait till we start playing only ourselves.
Yeah, then, that then it won't be as big of a deal. It's hard not to be a disappointment because, again, look, you have Arizona State losing, you have Kansas State losing to Army. Like, yeah, there's teams who won, and we'll touch on those here in a little bit, but, like, there's a whole lot of teams who won games they were supposed to win. And you're not going to get credit for winning the games that you were supposed to win handily. You are going to get dinged for bad losses, and that's where I want to go next because there were 3 of what I would call bad losses. Our first ones of the season for the Big 12, none of the losses in week 1 I would perceive as bad, but this week we had 3 that were quite bad. Kansas State, of course, lost to Army 24-21. Not the Army team that went 12-2 last season and won the American, the Army team that opened their season a week ago losing to FCS Tarleton State. Here is a wild stat for you. Kansas State had just 6 possessions for the entire game. Army had 9. Just let that sink in for a minute. 6 possessions is disgusting. West Virginia was outgained 429 yards to 250. Had Ohio not turned the ball over 3 times, including at the West Virginia 24-36, and had a missed field goal, this game could have been a whole lot worse than it actually turned out to be, with West Virginia losing 17-10 at Ohio. And of course, Oklahoma State loses 69-3 at Oregon, the worst loss in program history since a 67-point loss to Oklahoma all the way back in 1907. So, just the worst loss in program in 118 years. Oklahoma State has now been outscored 121-3 against their last 2 FBS opponents last year and this year. Oregon had 10 offensive plays of at least 20 yards and 5 plays of at least 40. These are the most points allowed by Oklahoma State since allowing 71 to Texas in 1998. Everyone remembers the 90s. Shout out to Mike Ray on Twitter for this one. Since the beginning of the 2022 season, there have only been 44 games where an FBS team has scored 3 points or fewer and allowed 45 points or more. Only 2 teams in the country have done so more than twice. Vanderbilt 3 times, Oklahoma State 4. We can talk about Oklahoma State candidates for that job later. We'll save that for an episode down the road. But I have to ask you two, Joe, I'll let you go first here. What was the worst loss for the Big 12 this weekend out of those 3?
My brain, when I saw our rundown, immediately went to Kansas State because I expected West Virginia to be bad, and we all expected Kansas State to be good. And then, for whatever reason, Oklahoma State just didn't exist in the formula with this for me. And then when I really thought about it more and more, I think the answer is Oklahoma State. First off, Kansas State lost to Army, and everybody's going to clown them because Army lost to Tarleton. Tarleton's a top 5 team in the FCS. I know it's an FCS team, but they're actually very, very good. They've got a great quarterback. So it's understandable that maybe Tarleton was able to beat Army, and Army's actually closer to the 12-2 team we saw last year and just had a hiccup in week 1. I still don't think Kansas State's very good based off of what I've seen. Nonetheless, it's Oklahoma State, in my opinion, because what it means to not just this season. When we started going into this new look Big 12, the thought, I think, across the conference was Oklahoma State was going to be one of those flagship programs for the conference. And Mike Gundy was going to be one of those flagship coaches for the conference. And it's very, very clear that that's not the case. They're probably going to have to move into a different direction very soon. And it's not good to have a big, storied state school that spent the last 2 decades plus being one of the best programs in the country. Consistently good, never bad. And they have fallen off this hard. I think that's a huge knock to the conference as a whole. So I would say Oklahoma State. The
end comes quickly for us all. Leah, what do you think was the worst loss for the conference this weekend?
Well, Philip, I just want to say, when I was watching the Oklahoma State game, I was thinking about you, and I was feeling really, 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 really bad for you, especially with the Oregon Duck mascot just making fun of you guys. I just want to give my condolences to you. But I have to go with Kansas State. I think with them being preseason ranked, 17, I think I have a little hard feeling for them too with Iowa State playing them, us being really excited and then kind of realizing, ooh, man, they're not as good as we thought. And so it's just kind of frustrating because they had so much potential going into the season. And again, there's a lot of football left, but kind of like what Joe mentioned last question, like it just looks bad to the media and to everyone else's perceptions of the Big 12 when Kansas State had so much potential and then they're kind of just falling off a little bit.
I know it's a cheat, but I almost feel like you both chose the correct answers. Because to your point, Joe, Oklahoma State was supposed to be one of the flagships, but so has Kansas State the way it's played the last few years under Coach Kleiman, with the exception of the COVID year. This has been a team that has been one of the most consistent programs in the Big 12. And now what? And I get it. Look, they lost to Tulane the year they won the Big 12 conference, okay? Oklahoma State got to the Big 12 title game a couple of years ago after losing to South Alabama. Losing to a G5 team, losing a non-conference game is not going to keep you out of potentially the conference championship game. But it does hurt a bit when you have that kind of a mark. And again, no offense, Army lost a ton from last year's team. I don't think that they're the same 12-2 team with a slight blip from last year. I think that's a bad loss. I think it's tough for Kansas State. I think it's bad that Oklahoma State is as bad as they are. I think it's bad that Arizona State, the defending Big 12 champs, went to what perceived as the worst team in the SEC and lost a game where they just didn't play all that well. The Big 12 needs some teams to be consistently at the top. And so far, teams that we have expected to do that have not been. And from a national perspective, that hurts the conference overall. Now, from a consistency standpoint, that leads us to two other teams we've got to talk about. Of course, Baylor took 2 overtimes, but they got the win over SMU, despite trailing for most of the game. Like I said, SMU was up 14 with 6 minutes to play. It didn't matter. Baylor still won, double overtime, 48-45. Shout out Sawyer Robertson. He is not the problem for Baylor, and I don't think anyone's going to blame him for the start to this season. He's 61 for 98 for 859 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 0 interception. If he had any semblance of a defense so far, they'd be 2-0, and he would be on those Heisman lists. Alas, so far, Baylor does not. The other team who had a marquee win this weekend, of course, Arleah Nelson, the one who has referenced this a couple times, Iowa State, beating Iowa in El Assico for a second straight season for the first time since the 2011-2012 years, and winning at home for the first time since 2011. Huge, huge win over Iowa. Another slugfest, another gross, low-scoring affair, but Iowa State was the better team and looked like it. And if you really watched that game, Iowa State came in with we're going to play this game like we always do, like we're also Iowa. And I know the score looks close. Iowa State won this one a little bit more comfortably than the score might indicate. So I will ask you both, Iowa State or Baylor, and I love that I have you two on today to answer this, Iowa State and Baylor fans, what was the more important win for the Big 12 this weekend?
So in my heart, obviously, Iowa State, especially with being a house divided. I mentioned it on Cyclone Fanatic. My older brother is an Iowa fan. So this was really important for our sibling rivalry for Iowa State to come out on top. But for the Big 12 in general, I think I have to go with Baylor. On paper, Iowa State was supposed to win and people really expected it. So even though the score was, 16-13, they came out on top. They were supposed to. But Baylor, kind of surprised me a little bit. Double overtime win, against SMU, who was in the college football playoffs last year. So overall, again, we can mention it again, for outside perspective, media perspective, I think Baylor has my vote.
See, this is great. I love this because I'm going the other way.
Let's go. I was hoping that would happen.
Because I think it is the more important win for Baylor internally. It was the more important for Baylor to win that game, because if you go 0-2, the hot seat that's under Dave Aranda is on fire. The fan base is freaking out. Now everybody's taking a breath and they're everybody kind of believes again. But for the conference, I think it's the Iowa State game, because it's SMU. People are going to spend all season, every year, trying to find a way to discount what SMU is going to do. Baylor's not going to get that much credit unless Auburn's doing really, really well. They want Baylor to look good so they can boost Auburn up because they beat us. But I think you mentioned it earlier when we started recording, Phil, which was you got to win the games that you're supposed to win or you'll get dinged for that. Iowa State won the game that they were supposed to win. If they had lost that game, then it's, the Big Ten. You just can't beat the Big Ten. The Big 12 can't compete against these guys. Iowa owns Iowa State. Iowa State winning that game, I think, is more important we won't get as much credit for winning it, but we have deflected the negativity that would have come with a loss.
So valid. So valid.
Yeah, look, both are in different ways. Because there are high hopes for Baylor, now it's like, okay, well, you lost to Auburn in a game that was, maybe you fixed some things. We know that Baylor's offense is going to be good this season. They still have opportunities to continue to have a really good year. For Iowa State, at this point, Iowa State is everyone has their version of power rankings, however you want to do it. Iowa State's got 2 wins over Power 4 teams. We can debate how good Kansas State is. Maybe Iowa will be good. Maybe they'll go 7-5. And their FCS win is over an FCS team that's going to make the FCS playoff. Iowa State's got a good resume. But the fact that they're 14th in the latest AP poll and Illinois is in the top 10, gag me, please. Good heavens, that is
what is
ludicrous.
It, 11 out of the SEC are in?
Yeah, it's 11 out of 10 teams is SEC and Big Ten. They tie for a 3-way tie for 4th. Look, it's a joke, but Iowa State's gonna kind of have to carry the Big 12 this year, and they've done it so far. And look, we haven't had a team be a repeat Big 12 title game team since the Big 12 title game came back in 2017. It's not just that we haven't had back-to-back winners outside of OU for the first 3 years. OU is the only team who went to the championship game in back-to-back years. Iowa State's looking like the team to do it. And look, for all the nonsense that the Big 12 gets, we need some consistency. And if that's going to be Iowa State, I'm all for it. I'm perfectly happy. If Iowa State's going to be the team who's consistently going to be a quality team, beating Iowa every year, playing well in bowl games, and going to be contending for the conference, that's good. Because we need 3 to 4 of those who are regularly sitting there. And it's fine. It's the Big 12. You're going to have teams that rise and fall. But if this Big 12 conference is going to get the respect it deserves, it needs a few teams to have some consistency. So speaking of teams who so far have not been consistent, Arizona State, Sam Leavitt was good. Jordan Tyson was the only guy you could trust on offense. Outside of that, not a whole lot to be excited about for Arizona State's offense. It just really didn't seem like they got off the bus until late in the first half. Through 2 games, Arizona State is averaging 10 penalties per game. It's not the worst in the country because the NCAA hasn't updated their stats, but I can tell you it's not going to be last place, but it's not much better. Same thing with penalty yards where they already racked up 142 through 2 games. Not ideal. Again, Sam Leavitt's been good. Kind of like Baylor. Quarterback's not the problem right now. Everyone spent money on quarterbacks in the Big 12. Might have needed to do a little bit more spending in some other areas as well. You guys have any thoughts on Arizona State after this weekend?
I've been scared of what they might not be this year just because Cam Scatterbo is so important to them. But I wanted to believe because you have that continuity of coach and quarterback, and that's such a big thing. But that's what in that Mississippi State game, they just didn't have a guy that would be like, okay, hey, just everybody hop on my back and I'm going to carry you. And it doesn't matter how loud it gets. And it doesn't matter what 5-yard penalty we get. I got you guys. And they don't have him. And I'm worried that there may be it may be a flash in the pan thing that we saw from Arizona State last year where Leavitt's great. Tyson's great, but the rest of the team just isn't, and they're kind of what we thought they were going to be coming into the conference.
I was going to say, I enjoyed watching them so much last year. It was just entertaining football, and I had very high hopes for them this season, and I was looking forward to watching what they could do. But obviously, after last game, I'm a little disappointed, and maybe I'll put them at the bottom of my football watching lists on Saturday.
All right, let's run through a few more outcomes from across the Big 12. Texas Tech 62, Kent State 14. I'm ready for Tech to play a real opponent. Utah 63, Cal Poly 9. Same thing for Utah. Luckily, Utah and Texas Tech open conference play against each other in 2 weeks. UCF 68, North Carolina A&T 7. Don't let it fool you. North Carolina A&T is not a good FCS team. Colorado 31, Delaware 7. Shout out Parker Fleming. His "Did we really get beat that bad?" graphics are always some of the best things that drop every single week. The score is not as indicative of how much Colorado beat Delaware by, but I'm going to take the win, and we're going to roll with it. After a rain delay, Arizona 48, Weber State 3. Hello, Arizona. Cincinnati 34, Bowling Green 20. Any thoughts on any of those outcomes, Leah or Joe?
These teams need to play people.
Yeah, I was just, all the teams were going in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. We're getting spoiled by some of these early season games that some are playing and others aren't, and I'm also torn on it because I'm almost like we need a college preseason at this point. But yeah, no, like I feel like if Texas Tech would have played just a Power 5 school, then they wouldn't be sitting at, what are they, like? Are they even still in the top 25, or did they get pushed out? I don't even know where they were.
No,
they ended up
I
today.
I think it's just at this point.
Are they still at
Iowa
24?
State, Texas Tech and Utah are in there.
Gotcha. So, I mean, it's like if Texas Tech had been playing anybody real, they had all this hype coming in, and it's almost like because their schedule was such garbage the first 2 weeks of the year, everybody's forgotten about them. And they were supposed to be this like, hey, everybody watch out for Texas Tech. They spent more money than God in the offseason on NIL. They brought in all of these epic players. It's finally the year that Joey's going to put it all together. And yeah, they're knocking the socks off of the teams that they're playing, but nobody cares because nobody's watching Texas Tech play KState. So I just wish they would have played somebody by now. They have Oregon State, I think, coming up next week. So That is slightly somebody, but it's better than
compared to UAPB and Kent State. Yes, it is a team that will field football players.
They're certainly one of the teams
can
of all time.
Be competitive. Yes, agreed. Joe, Leah, appreciate you so much. Everybody go check out Cyclone Fanatic, where Leah's doing great work during the football season. And of course, she will join us more throughout this season and will be here for softball season as well. And for Joe, at the _Joe_Goodman. On Twitter. Yes, got it. Okay. I had spent a minute since I've had to do that.
You passed.
No, wait. It's Leah CJ 21.
You don't even know. Ha! Can't expect me to. And of course, Joe is one of the two co-hosts of the Bear Den podcast, our Baylor representative here in the 1012 network. Find every show on the network at 1012network.com. Y'all, it's been a pleasure, and we'll talk to you again soon here in the rotation.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Phil.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
All right. Finally time to debut our dive-in segment, in which case we're going to bring somebody on each week to take a closer look at one Big 12 team in particular or one game. Today, very excited to have Alec Busse of the Iowa State 247 site joining us for the first time. Alec, welcome to the 1012, man.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. It should be a lot of fun to recap a really impactful win for Iowa State over the weekend.
I feel like you just tried to undersell by saying really impactful, really like nonchalantly. It's just the first time they've won back-to-back Cy Hawks since 2011 and 2012, and the first time they've won it in Ames since 2011. It always feels bigger to win like that first time after you've lost a few times, but it's hard not to look at this one and say they've achieved a couple things they haven't done in quite some time. So from that standpoint, not even just the long-term impact, how big was this win for Iowa State on Saturday?
Yeah, anytime you get a rivalry win, I think it's a big deal. I think you continue to factor in some of the history of it. Like you mentioned there, it's the first time Iowa State's won back-to-back against Iowa since 2011, 2012. It's the first time that they've won 3 of 4 against the Hawkeyes since that same time frame. So Iowa State is seemingly kind of gaining some control of the rivalry for the first time since at least the early 2010s. If you want to go back a little bit further than that, since really the late 90s, early 2000s when they won 5 straight, that's the most that Iowa State has ever won in a row in this series. So for Iowa State to win 3 of 4 back-to-back against Iowa, I think is a big deal. Matt Campbell was asked about, this being his first win in Ames against the Hawkeyes, and he kind of dodged the question, but you could tell it meant a little bit more to him. He kind of, talked about wanting to give something to the fans and show his appreciation to the fans, especially because they had so many fans travel to Ireland for Iowa State to win over KState in week 0. And I think that today, the win that they had on Saturday was a good representation for him of, an appreciation to the fans and what they've been able to kind of lift this program to throughout his entire tenure here at Iowa State. And now Iowa State looks like they're, again, one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the Big 12 at this point, undisputedly, in conversations with Utah, Texas Tech, probably TCU, and that conversation as well as among the top 3 or 4 teams in the conference, because the Cyclones have 3 wins to start the season against all 3 of their opponents, and then 2 of those wins come against power conference opponents as well. So they're off to a great start, and they've looked pretty good for the most part in those 3 games.
It's got to also feel great to, as you kind of mentioned, scratch that itch, considering how many close calls there have been in Ames through the years. 7-point loss in 23. You get a 1-point loss in 19. You get a 3-point loss in 2017. They've been so close at home. And look, that part of that is That's what this series is. Like it is low scoring. It is a game that is typically won by, anywhere from 1 to 3 to 4 points. To see Iowa State the last few years really be able to almost figure out how to play the way they have to play against Iowa, which is kind of like Iowa, and be able to get it over on them 3 of the last 4 years. Because look, Iowa State never looks against Iowa like they'll look the rest of the year against the Big 12 opponents. It's just not what they're going to do. They're going to play a certain style. And so to finally see them start to kind of get over on Iowa this way is honestly, I think, a testament to what Matt Campbell's really been building here and to how far I feel like Iowa State has come these last few years.
Yeah, I think as much as anything, it's just Iowa's ability to control the game flow of every game and every opponent that they match up with. And I think what Iowa State has figured out isn't necessarily that they have to play Iowa's game, but they figured out how to be successful within the confines of a game that Iowa wants to play. Anytime that Iowa's on the field, it's going to be a physical game. It's going to be defensive first game. I think you saw that in Saturday's game, the fact that neither team had more than 240 total yards. Obviously, 16-13 is the final score. I don't think the winning team in this series has had more than 24 points since the pandemic. So that just kind of puts into perspective how low scoring this rivalry has been. That no one has scored more than 3 touchdowns in this series since the pandemic and maybe even since 2019 or so. So, yeah, I think that what you kind of diagnosed there does make a lot of sense, is that Iowa State has found a way to be successful against a program that is really hard to be successful against, because what Iowa does so well is they don't lose games, right? Like they have mastered the ability to not lose games and force their opponents to make mistakes. And then when that happens, they capitalize. And even within Saturday's game, I think you saw that a little bit, right? Because Iowa State, it probably left a few touchdowns on the board in the first half, definitely left 1 touchdown on the board in the first half after the Jeremiah Cooper interception that was brought back inside of Iowa's red zone, and Iowa State wasn't able to punch in a touchdown. So you leave touchdowns on the board on at least one occasion in the first half, and then Iowa has an 85-yard drive, I think it was, right at the end of the first half that occupies 9 minutes of game time. They come out in the second half. They have another really long drive that ends in a field goal, and they've all of a sudden occupied about 14 minutes of game time on 2 consecutive possessions. And suddenly you're in a tie game, I think it was at that point, and there's a lot of game pressure on you as the Cyclones, and they handled it really well. And I think one of the reasons they've been able to handle it well is because of their starting quarterback. Rocco Becht now has led 6 game-winning drives in his time as Iowa State's starting quarterback. That's a lot. That's really impressive, right? 6 game-winning drives. 2 of those are against Iowa. Obviously, he had the really clutch game-winning drives against UCF and Utah a year ago. He had one against Miami in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. He just steps up in the biggest moments for Iowa State. And I think their ability to win in Cy-Hawk the last couple of years is as much about Rocco Becht as it is about anyone else on the roster. And that includes Kyle Conradi, the kicker, who's got 2 54-yard game-winning field goals against Iowa in the last 2 years.
I love that point you made on Rocco Becht's game-winning drives. Because, look, one of the things that we've held against Matt Campbell for most of his tenure in Ames is he was awful in one-score games. In close one-score games, Iowa State's record under Matt Campbell was bad outside of 1 year where they made it to the Big 12 title game against Oklahoma. But last year, it was phenomenal, and they had a great season, a great run. And to start this year, it's another season where you're now 2-0 in close games. Do we need to get a lot of credit to Matt Campbell for figuring some things out? Or is this something where Rocco Becht has just been able to help in these situations, in these close games, really kind of put the team on his back and help change that narrative?
Yeah, since Rocco Becht took over as Iowa State's starter in week 1 of the 2023 season, 13 games that he has started have been decided by 1 score or less. That's about 43% of Iowa State's games since week 1 of the 2023 season have been decided by 8 points or less. So that just puts into perspective that 40 to 45% of Iowa State's games are being decided by essentially a touchdown or fewer. And within that time frame, in the last 2 years, Iowa State has a combined record of 14-3. I think entering the year in the Big 12, and you know this as well as anyone, that there was so much discussion about ranking the top of the league's quarterbacks, whether it was Rocco Becht, Avery Johnson, Sawyer Robertson, Josh Hoover, Jalen Daniels, Sam Leavitt, obviously, all those guys, right? That you can include them in however you wanted to and rank them however you wanted to. I think Rocco's ceiling is lower than a lot of those guys because I don't know if he has the physical talents of Avery Johnson. I don't think he has the size of Josh Leavitt. I don't know if he has maybe the arm talent of Sawyer Robertson and Josh Hoover, but damn it, that kid knows how to win football games, right? Like as much as anything, Rocco Becht knows how to win football games because they're 14-3 since the start of the 2024 season. Rocco Becht is the reason that Matt Campbell will tell you this, that Rocco Becht is one of the main reasons that Iowa State kind of rose up from the frustrations of a 7-5 season in 2021 when the Cyclones were a preseason top 10 team, in 2022 when Rocco was taking a redshirt season and Iowa State's going 4-8, and then all of a sudden it looks like the strong momentum that Matt Campbell built from 2017 to 2020 is gone. And Rocco Becht has brought it back because he knows how to win football games. And he steps up in the biggest moments. He does it routinely in the clutch against teams with stout, strong defenses, even in games where he doesn't necessarily have to lead a game-winning drive like he did against Iowa on Saturday. He just like has an ability to slam the door shut on opponents too. And you think back to the way that the game ended against KState in week 0, right? Like they get the 4th down stop and on the Avery Johnson quarterback run, and Jameson Patton pops Avery Johnson. Iowa State gets the ball back and they never give it back to K-State. It's just like he just knows how to execute in the most tense moments at such a high level. And I think that his ability to be strong and be successful in those moments is why Iowa State has become one of the Big 12's best programs over the last 2 years. I mean, they're 14-3 since the start of 2024. Like that's really impressive.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We talked about earlier in the show, when the Big 12 is going through its changes and changing membership and size and team count, there was a perception that, Oklahoma State would be one of the flag bearers of this conference. And now we look where they are. And Kansas State had been one of the most consistent programs under Coach Kleiman outside of, 1 year in COVID. And now we're seeing a really off year for them, which seems a bit out of character. And Arizona State was the young darling last year. They go and win the Big 12, and now they've lost to what's considered one of the worst teams in the SEC. And so this has always been a conference of development. Teams rise and fall on a regular basis. Outside of, Oklahoma, we hadn't seen any team just consistently be one of the best teams. Now, we'd seen teams who had hung around the top of the conference a lot, but those teams now seem to be shifting and changing. Where do you feel like Iowa State right now is setting itself up to be within the Big 12? Is this a new one of those teams where they're going to be a perennial sitting there contending for the conference on a regular basis? Or are we just going through a really nice 2-3 year run with Rocco Becht as your starting quarterback?
I think it's a great question. I think as long as Rocco Becht's their starting quarterback, they're going to be in the conversation. But internally, I know the staff is really high on true freshman Alex Mansky. He was a composite 4-star prospect by 24/7 Sports, I believe, and he's someone who hails from a state committed to Iowa State over a strong recruitment from K-State. Texas A&M also wanted him as well. I think that Iowa State can be in that group. I think what we're going to see in the Big 12 overall is just like it's really hard to annually be at the top of the league. Part of the reason I say that is I picked Arizona State to win the conference in the preseason, but I didn't do it confidently. Like I picked them because it was a smart thing to do. They returned the most production of any team in the conference, second most nationally. They have a head coach that I find myself often just believing in the messaging of Kenny Dillingham and what he's saying. But at the same time, it was like they overperformed last year. And I think that they were probably a little overvalued because of that entering the season. And now, they're 1-1 in the year. They didn't look great in week 1 against Northern Arizona. They lost at Mississippi State. And they dominated the second half of the game against Mississippi State, but they were down 17-0 at the same time. In the first half, going into halftime, it was 17-3. And I think you're just kind of seeing things even out. And I think at some point you're going to see that happen for Iowa State, where it's just going to even out and their 14-3 record since the start of 2024 will eventually kind of find its level. But I don't know when that's going to be, because if you look at their looming Big 12 schedule, it's really, really favorable. They go on the road to play at Arkansas State this weekend. After that, they have a bye game, but then they get Arizona, Cincinnati, and Colorado. 2 of those games are on the road, but I would say it should be expected to win both of those games. They get BYU then at the end of October. Then they get Arizona State, who I don't think should be written off after losing to Mississippi State over the weekend. Iowa State's last month of the schedule is more difficult than probably the first month of the season if you just look at the opponents that they play, especially now with what we know about K-State. I think Iowa State can be within the top 5 to 6 of the Big 12 annually. I think that would be a good goal for the program. And then eventually you have to break through, right? Like it's a program that hasn't won a major conference championship in its history. It's a program that hadn't won more than 9 games in a season until last year. Like at some point the program needs to break through. They've gotten to a Big 12 title game twice in the last 5 years, Right now, it looks like they're one of the favorites to do it again this year. If they can get back to Arlington, it's time for them to break through and really kind of stake their claim, like you said, about their ability to kind of compete at the top of the league.
You kind of ran through the schedule. I'll ask you this. Look, we have perceptions of teams before seasons start, and then we have to do our best to throw those out once the season begins, because as we talk about in the Big 12 every year, strength of schedule is great in theory and a good thing to talk about. How many times we've seen the team who had the most difficult schedule having an easy one and vice versa. Looking at this schedule now for Iowa State, we're not sure how much we should believe in Arizona's offensive output through 2 weeks, given the opponents, but they could be a whole lot better than expected. You've got a Colorado team that, look, they gave Nebraska everything they could. They took care of Delaware. They might be more competitive than people thought they would be coming into the season. Obviously, you got Oklahoma State at the end of the year, but at this point, I think that one's a gimme. But we don't know what Arizona State is. TCU has played one game, but they were impressive against a North Carolina team that probably isn't very good. You look at this schedule.
Players. Call it what it is. Look at bad players in Chapel Hill.
You look at the schedule and say, okay, they should win this one, this one, this one. Is there a game you look out on the schedule and you go, we could be wrong about this team, and that could be a game that really scares me?
Yeah, I go to me, when I was doing their early season schedule, I was like, if they can get through their first 4 games with a 3-1 record or better, like they're going to have an opportunity to go to Arlington. But I always felt like the sequence of games against BYU, Arizona State, at TCU, and KU was going to be really difficult for Iowa State. And I think you can even throw the game at Colorado on the front end of that in the middle of October into the sequence as well, just because Colorado, I think you made a good point there. Like they've kind of been off to a weird start. Like I think their defense is going to get better as the season goes on. Their defense was pretty good last year. They have to replace a lot of production on their D-line that I think led the Big 12 in sacks last season. And obviously Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders are gone, but we don't need to talk about that because everyone knows it. I don't think Colorado's that bad. I don't know if I think that they're nearly as good as they were a year because they don't have the star power that they did, but I don't think they're bad. Like, I don't think that they're outwardly terrible like Oklahoma State is, or like West Virginia certainly looks like they will be, or UCF, right? Like, I don't think Colorado is just going to get railroaded by teams. BYU has looked really good through the first 2 weeks. Bachmeier's been awesome. I think BYU's outscored its first 2 opponents. Granted, it's Portland State and a bad Stanford team, like 96-3. So, like, that's damn impressive. Arizona State, like I said earlier, I'm not out on them. They dominated the second half of that game against Mississippi State. I think that ASU can still and will still contend at the top of the Big 12 this season. They return too much production. Sam Leavitt's too good. Jordan Tyson's probably the best skill talent in the conference. And I think Kenny Dillingham's one of the best young coaches in the country. TCU, what they showed in Chapel Hill, even if I don't think that North Carolina has very many good players, what TCU did to them is really impressive. And I think that TCU has talent. I think that Sonny Dykes is a good coach, and Josh Hoover is probably the most productive quarterback in the conference, so Sawyer Robertson certainly has a claim to stake there. And I think KU is interesting too, because Iowa State's lost them 3 years in a row. And imagine saying in 2020 to an Iowa State fan, you're going to win 3 in a row from the start of 2021, imagine saying in 2021 to an Iowa State fan, you're going to win 3 in a row against KState, but you're going to lose 3 in a row to KU. They'd be like, what? They would be like, what? That's what's happened. That's literally what's happened. They've lost 3 in a row to KU. And frankly, they haven't looked that good in 2 of them. They should have won in 2021 at KU. They missed a lot of field goals. But last year, they got torched through the air in Arrowhead by Kansas. And that's a series that I would say needs to flip back in its favor to me. I don't know if that's necessarily like the tense rivalry game that KState or that certainly Cyhawk is, but it's up there, right? Like, Iowa State fans care more about KU than they do many other Big 12 opponents annually. So yeah, I think that sequence of games can be really challenging from like the middle of October to the middle to late end of November.
Big 8 games matter, man. Big 8 games, they matter. Alec, you have been absolutely fantastic. I appreciate you joining us tonight, and this will not be the last time we have you on. Do me a favor, let everybody know where they can follow your work covering the Iowa State Cyclones. Yeah,
you can check me out at Cyclone Alert, Iowa State 24/7. You can Google either one of those things, it'll come up. You can also follow me on Twitter at Alec_Busse. Tweet out all of my stories there. And then you can also hear me Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 a.m. on KXNO and the Iowa Sports Radio Network. You can listen to that on the iHeartRadio apps. I appreciate you having me on. I apologize for the raspy voice. Got a little sick over the last couple of days, so we're trying to get the fluids rolling before the season gets too deep into it, and I'm not able to recover until the end of basketball season. So wish me some luck there.
Hey, good luck. Get well. It's going around. It always does. And enjoy the season, man. It should be a good one.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it. And good luck with the rest of the show.
We're going to have a great rest of the show here in a minute, but we have got to get to one of the sponsors here for us. That, of course, is Battle Bets. If you have loved the concept of betting on college football but never want to have to spend any real money to do it, then download the Battle Bets app now. Look, the season has started, and I understand that, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. You can still download the app and start a league of your own with friends or other fans of your team and dive in and get going. Or you can join the Ten12 Pod Fans League. Shout out to week 2 winner, who was, hold on, I got it right here. Come on, app, load. We're going to do weekly prizes. We're doing a grand prize at the end of the season. So go and download the Battle Bets app and join the Ten12 Pod Fans League or start a league of your own. Just let them know that we sent you. Of course, the link is in the show notes. I am loving Battle Bets. It is so much fun. I've been okay so far. I'm tied for 13th in points. I had a good week. I think I had a good week. I won 3,400, right? Okay. 59% hit rate. I'll take it. I'll absolutely take it. So download the app today. Come and have some fun making some real bets with fake money with us.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
All right. Third segment of the show. My good friend Chase Kiddy joining us to talk about the whose stock is up, whose stock is down, and more coming up. Chase, welcome back, bud.
Hello. Happy Sunday evening.
I don't want to go too far into it because we'll save it for our picks pod this week, but you and I, sir, we did well. We did well this week. I'm looking forward to recapping that one on Wednesday night, which drops on Thursday, but we get to do a little bragging.
Yeah, what a week to be too busy to log the Battle Bets. Yeah. Really left it on the vine this week. I killed it. I had an awesome weekend. I crushed it. Not that matters.
Not in the app. Well, you know what? Like I said, weekly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking
winners,
home,
weekly winners.
a couple $1,000. So, like, you don't cry too hard for me, Argentina. But as far as the Battle Bets app goes, it's not great.
All right. Chase, as we do here, we're going to start with let's start with the impact from the outcomes. What outcome in the Big 12 this weekend do you feel like really changed your opinion on a team the most?
Yeah, I think let's highlight what you said there at the end for these first few times that we're doing this, right? This is not who had the best weekend or who had the worst weekend. It is, I am adjusting sort of the opinion or the cadence of how I'm thinking about a team. This is stock up, stock down. And a lot of teams played FCS teams this weekend or didn't play major opponents. And so you kind of had to, this is a bit of a Rorschach test for week 2, but I landed on Arizona. For me, Arizona, UCF, and West Virginia were the 3 teams that you and I identified in the offseason consistently as the bottom of the conference. And 2 of those 3 teams have really lived down to the billing so far. I guess you would say. UCF and West Virginia have looked quite bad and sometimes very, very bad, depending on which quarter you're catching them in. Again, that's something we can cover more on Wednesday, and I'm guessing you guys talked about earlier in the show. Arizona, I'm not going to crown them a Big 12 championship competitor because you ran up nearly 50 points on Weber State. But if you're expected to be bad and you handle business and you're averaging 45 points a game against Hawaii and Weber, you're doing what you're supposed to do, and that's more than we can say about the other bottom quintile of the conference. So for me, Arizona gets kind of a bump this week up into the, okay, I'm interested section of the conference.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I had them last. I thought they were going to finish in last place. I had zero expectations for them. So yeah, it makes sense that they've come up. I am in a Big 12 Survivor League and regret using my Arizona pick in week 1. I wish I had done UCF and saved Arizona for later. But c'est la vie. here we are. I think Arizona moving up is great. It'll be interesting to see them against Kansas State this weekend, a team I think helps you with a perfect transition to the team I'm pretty sure you have with your stock moving down.
Yeah, I don't know how you put anybody else here. I mean, obviously West Virginia doesn't love losing to Ohio. Ohio now 3-0 lifetime in home games against West Virginia. What a weird stat. But, I mean, it's time. You got to put Kansas State here. This is a team that was expected to compete for the championship. They're now 1-2. They lost as a 17-point favorite to Army. They lost a conference game in week 0. The Ireland curse that people are whispering about got Scott Frost fired from Nebraska a couple years ago. Absolutely tanked Florida State's season last year. And you have to think now, I mean, I don't believe in dumb shit, but I don't know what else to call this. It seems like it is infecting a Chris Kleiman squad there in Manhattan. And I don't want to sound dramatic, but look at the schedule. They're 1-2 right now. Look at the schedule. Tell me how they get to bowl eligibility based on what you've seen, because I don't see it. And if you're telling me in 3 weeks they went from co-favorite to win the conference with a 8.5 or 9.5 win total down to I don't know if they can make a bowl game, that is the definition of stock down.
Yeah, no, it is. A reminder that one win they have was squeaking out a last-minute win over North Dakota, who is not, of the Dakota schools, not the best, I think is fair to say. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting run for Kansas State as they move forward because everything just seems off. Again, full credit to Army. Army got 9 drives in that game. Kansas State got 6 drives for the entire game, which is an absolutely ridiculous number. But at this point, when you have a 13-0 lead against Army, you should probably be able to put it away. I'm going to make sure everybody goes and reads your latest Bet MGM article that talks more about how you're feeling about Arizona and Kansas State, as well as some interesting thoughts on Colorado and their win over Delaware. But where I want to go here with you next is actually to talk about the quarterbacks, because we came into the season saying that the Big 12 crop of quarterbacks was phenomenal, and I don't think it has disappointed us at all this year. Set aside your thoughts on Baylor given their performances in week 1 and week 2. I'm not blaming Sawyer Robertson for that. I know Kansas blew it against Missouri, but Jalen Daniels looked like the Jalen Daniels we've been promised for the last few years. Rocco Becht has been better than we expected, and he has answered any and all questions so far about what he might look like this year, and it's been phenomenal. Again, another guy that I'm not going to blame for the team's problems is Sam Leavitt, who has been really good for Arizona State. He needs some other guys to step up and the team to stop being so dang penalized. Like I'm feeling pretty good about our thoughts on the Big 12 being the best quarterback conference in college football this year. What are your thoughts overall? And is there anyone so far that's maybe stood out to you that we didn't talk enough or didn't expect enough from this offseason?
Well, I believe your prediction from our immediate preseason week 0 episode was 6 of the 12 top bet. I am butchering this.
6 of the top 12 quarterbacks in the country would be from the Big 12.
Thank you. 6 of the top 12 quarterbacks from college football would be from the Big 12, and I think that's pretty reasonable. I thought that at the time. I think it's borne out that way. We've got some names, I think, in the mix for that we didn't necessarily highlight at the time. And you just said a lot of really worthy names. I would maybe quibble around the margins. Like, I think I've been slightly less impressed by Becht than you. That's not to say he hasn't been good, but I would say he's been good. You would probably say he's been very good. That's a marginal difference. I think we got to talk about Dampier. I mean, and this is where we sort of can point back to my post week 2 article here on the blog. If you are not locked into Heisman Trophy odds and Heisman Trophy betting, you might not know this, but the big mover of September so far has been Mr. Utah football quarterback, who went from opening at 100-1 and being 50-1 to win the Heisman 2 weeks ago. So long shot territory. He is currently, right now, Sunday night, 10-1, third or fourth name in the entire competition, if you want to go strictly by odds and market analysis. So that's a pretty big upgrade. I was talking to some Utah fans on Reddit a few days ago, and like the general gist is like, yeah, he's in the mix. Are we confident that our guy can win the Heisman as the quarterback of Utah? Maybe still a bit skeptical. I understand the skepticism, but the path is obviously there in terms of getting to be at minimum a finalist, because Utah is in position to make a good run at the Big 12 championship because they have competent offensive play this year. They're currently the betting favorite if you look at the odds. And then having a dual threat quarterback is the modern cheat code to winning the Heisman. I think the history bears that out. So there's a lot of really good quarterbacks this year in college football that are going to compete for this award. But it's easy to see with the stats and the performance that he has given the first 2 weeks why he has shot up into major contention this early. And I think he's going to be all the great names that you put out there at the beginning of this conversation. I think he's going to be at the top of it going forward, at least for the next several weeks.
Look, I two thoughts. First off, I said all off season, I do not think the Big 12 title game will be a rematch from the regular season. I will note Utah and Iowa State do not play during the regular season. Also, as far as Devin Dampier goes, so far, and yes, I get it, it's a terrible UCLA team and not great FCS team, but 38 for 48 through the air for 398 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, 20 carries for 112 yards at 5.6 yards per rush, and a touchdown. So he's totaled at this point over, what is that, and 10 yards and 6 total touchdowns. That's the kind of stats you put up if you want to be a Heisman, if you want to be there in New York come the end of the season. Now, obviously, again, they haven't played anybody of note. They got a lot of credit for how they trashed UCLA, and I mean, I if Big Noon or Game Day, if not both, aren't in Lubbock in 2 weeks, that is a massive, massive, massive miss by both networks. I don't care what else is on the schedule because I don't think Utah is going to go lose at Wyoming, and I don't think Texas Tech is going to lose to Oregon State, and you're going to have 2 3-0 Big 12 teams, both just churning points and setting up what should be a really exciting start to Big 12 play in week 4. That's the first test for both, and I cannot. I'm like, all right, I don't want to look ahead because I'm going to enjoy every week college football. I don't know how we're not already getting excited about that game. That one is going to be awesome.
Yeah, cosign.
Yeah. Love it. Oh, man. I'm already looking at like the week 1 of Big 12 play. Next week's schedule is pretty good. We'll talk about that here in just a second. Chase, any other final thoughts before we let you go?
Yeah, I'm always going to try to do like an early look ahead bet for the Big 12 schedule in my little weekly recap piece. Today I wrote about Kansas State playing Arizona, which is a weeknight game. I think it's on Friday. Just a little transparency on the line movement. When I wrote the piece, it was Kansas State minus 2.5 at Arizona. By the time it was edited and ready for me to publish, it was down to Kansas State minus 1.5. And now I'm looking at it tonight as we're recording it, Arizona minus 1. So I'm not going to tell you that just the army of people reading my blog post pushed enough action to move that line. That seems unlikely. But the market generally agreed with me. Why should Kansas State be laying points on the road, given what we've seen so far from both Kansas State and Arizona? So that's something to think about, because if it's going to move from Arizona +1 to Arizona -1, you're probably going to see further movement.
Yeah. Oh, look, I mean, when Circa dropped their number earlier on Sunday, it was a pick'em. So, which I was like, that's interesting. That's something to keep an eye on. So, definitely something to follow. And of course, we will, you and I will make picks for every single non-FCS Big 12 game. Lighter load this week. Just 7 Big 12 games to pick after picking like 13 week 2. We got 7 this week because we got a few FCS. We're going to wrap up FCS games this week. Nothing against the FCS, but I'm ready to start learning some real things about teams. Of course, we'll have the link to Chase's article in the show notes. Check it out and come listen to us on Thursday when we make picks with a will be mentioned or named on day of guest, just to make sure we don't. What happens when we tease here on the show, it falls through. Chase, appreciate it, bud, and we'll talk to you again on Thursday.
Yeah, we'll see what interesting games might be happening next weekend. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
All right, so let's end the show by looking ahead to week 3. It is it's an interesting week of games. We got 3 FCS games, okay? 3 FCS games. Glad we're going to get rid of those. But let's run through the whole list. We got a Friday doubleheader, the non-conference Big 12 battle of Kansas State at Arizona, which is just really more interesting than we expected with where both teams land. Of course, Kansas State 1-2 coming off a loss to Army, and Arizona 2-0, putting up a lot of points, albeit against Hawaii and Weber State, but still a much more interesting battle now than we thought it would be at the beginning of the season or before the season started. This is why we throw out all the stuff, all the preseasons go out. We got to start from scratch once the games start getting played. Also, we get our first Big 12. Actually, sorry, it's our second Big 12 battle. I keep forgetting about week 0 sometimes. It just blows past me. We got our second conference game, Houston hosting Colorado, which I think is a really interesting game and should tell us a lot about both those teams. I'm going to have a hard time picking that one. The Backyard Brawl is back. Never, ever disappointed to have that game being played. West Virginia hosting Pitt. Make sure and listen to Raspy Voice Kids this week. I'm sure they will be spitting fire because they always are when the Backyard Brawl is on the schedule. Texas Tech is hosting Oregon State. That's by far the most challenging game of the season so far. So maybe some sort of a test for the Red Raiders. Arizona State hosting Texas State should be an interesting one. 2 Big 12 teams traveling to G5s or G6s this week. I'm intrigued by this one. Utah's on the road at Wyoming. Iowa State at Arizona State. I'm going to try and go to that one because it's 2 hours from my house. I'm going to try. If I do get to go, I'll bring some 10-12 stuff and see if I can hand it out to some Iowa State fans who will be there in Jonesboro. Like I mentioned, our final FCS games of the season, Baylor hosting Samford, Cincinnati facing Northwestern State, and TCU back after a week off playing Abilene Christian. Oklahoma State, UCF, BYU, and Kansas are all off this week. 4 teams are idle, got a little bit of a light load, but it should be an interesting one. Kansas State at Arizona, that's a spicy game now. Colorado, Houston's a Big 12 game. That's something to keep an eye on. Both of those on Friday. We get the Backyard Brawl. Can West Virginia bounce back, or is it going to get ugly? Texas Tech's best test of the season. I don't expect much of a test for Utah or Iowa State, but it's still a road game and a G5. What happens there? So it's not the sexiest of weeks, but it's still a good week of college football. I think Friday is a pretty good night to just sit down and enjoy yourself. Colorado Houston's at 6:30 on ESPN. State Arizona is at 8 o'clock on Fox. You have plenty opportunity to watch both those games. I will certainly be trying to do so. You should as well. And we're just a little bit away from week 4 and that week 4 slate. Oh man. It's good. It's good. It's a good slate. I'm very excited for that one. All right. Y'all, thanks for listening. Like I said off the top, leave us a rating, 5 stars, please. Leave us a review. I would love to have it. Download Battle Bets. Shout out to everybody who supports this show. Thank you to every one of you who listens. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. We'll be back on Thursday to draw our picks for this week with Chase and a guest. We'll talk to y'all then.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized, so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.